Hey, welcome everybody. My name is Jim Hodina or James, either one is fine. I'm here with Fun Fong, and we're both co-chairs for the State and Affiliates Committee. Along with Fun and I, we have two executive board members, Kevin Pryor, and I'll just call you Vish. I'll just that's Lakshamana Vishwant. So. And then finally, Renee Bartlett, Executive Director. Okay. And Fun and I will lead the discussion tonight. What we're really trying to do is share with you some guidance and some work documents that we think may be helpful for the state chapters. This is not a decision-making committee. We are not going to get into any business that might be at the delegates meeting for state chapters, because that is really the delegates' decisions to make. But we recognize that there may be some people on this call that may have interest in that, but it's really not in the jurisdiction anymore of our committee. We are, as I'll explain later, appointed by the executive board, and we serve the executive board in that manner. We try to provide additional resources out to the state chapters, and that's what we really want to talk about today. Fun, did you want to say anything before I hit this agenda and slides?
I also want to welcome everybody and want to thank everyone for their interest in coming out to see what we've been up to over the past year. And we appreciate the input, the feedback, and suggestions for our further efforts there. So thanks to Jim for all of his hard work. He's really done all the heavy lifting there. And I'm only done a little bit of spot work here and there. I'll be quite honest. So thank you, Jim, for everything. Thank you for your leadership there. So without further ado, did you want me to start with one of the first?
Well, here, I've got an agenda that I thought I would share with the group. Fun.
Great.
And just to let them know it's coming. Kevin and Vish, did you have anything in addition to add, or you are the liaisons for this committee to the executive board?
No, nothing.
Okay.
Welcome.
All right. So I'm gonna jump over to one set of slides I've got put together. And this, again, the States and Affiliates Committee, were often referred to as SAC. I'll share with you who those committee members are. I've already introduced our executive board liaison. And then we have some supporting staff members in addition to Renee Bartlett. And so I'll do that real quickly, just a couple slides, and then Fun will talk about a proposal on state chapter naming guidelines. I know that has been confusing over the past years, so we're trying to offer some ideas led by Fun to maybe put that in context so that we have a policy document that can be reviewed and approved as we go forward. And then, as most of you may know, we did a large survey of all the state chapters, and that will be the where we spend most of our time tonight, going over those survey responses and how the committee analyzed. Tried to basically consolidate some of the comments into themes, and then we'd like to wrap that up with identifying some action items that perhaps SAC can work on for next year based on those themes that we identify, as well as what Fun talks about for the state chapter naming guidelines. And then we'll just at the very end conclude by, documenting or making sure we're all on the same page and we haven't left anything off. So SAC is a group of U.S. Chess members. A lot of them have state or affiliate committee, or state or affiliate experience, either current or in the past. You may recognize some of these names from your work with them. And they've all contributed this year to the work that we're about to present today. And in addition to the names I've already mentioned for US Chess Executive Board and Renee, Rose McMahon is our governance coordinator with US Chess. And she does a lot of work behind the scenes, especially with helping us administer that survey. And I just wanted to recognize all the hard work that she does. She's really great, and a lot of things we do are much easier because of the work that she does. So what is SAC's role? What governs our committee and to the extent of the activities that we do? Well, first, we were formed out of an executive board motion dated back in November 2017. And there may be predecessors to SAC, but that's the current form. We were given the mission to advise the executive board on matters related to US Chess state chapters and US Chess affiliates. Undoubtedly, most of our efforts focus on the state chapters, but we also have work that we take on with the club affiliates. When necessary, if something is referred to us from the executive board, there may be a claim or an appeal submitted that they ask for our feedback on. And we'll analyze that, try to collect and sift through a lot of the data, and then provide that back to the executive board where they make a final decision. We collaborate with the bylaws committee. Many of you may be familiar with the delegates action of continuing interest, which outlines recommended and required practices for state chapters. Something in that nature may go through, or the bylaws themselves. I think 2 years ago were updated specific to state chapters. And so that's how some of that collaboration manifests itself. And then finally, and what we really want to do more of, is to lead the development of educational materials to state and local affiliates. Just identifying, addressing any supports they might need for roles, responsibilities, sharing best practices, and any other general guidelines, such as what Fun will be sharing with you here shortly. Okay, so I'm going to end that, and I'm going to stop sharing. Any questions regarding where we come from and where our charge lies? Oh, I'm sorry, Mike, I misspelled your name. Apologize. It was had to correct something quickly and I didn't get it back in there correctly. Well, then without that, I'm just going to turn it over to Fun. He's next on the agenda, and he's going to talk about state chapter naming guidelines that he and I have looked at, or Fun has wrote, and many of us have looked at.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jim. This endeavor is sort of a continuation of the ADM that John Fernandez had expressed last year in wanting us to develop guidelines that would disambiguate the state affiliates from non-state affiliates there. And so this is my first swipe at coming up with guidelines here, and this is still in draft form. It's really just been examined only by, I guess, Jim, Kevin, and I at first right now, and it really is just based off of about 4 different basic principles here. And just to go over really quickly, let me get back to the, so the idea is to try to keep a state affiliate name distinct from a non-state affiliate name so that it is easy to intuit pretty much just by hearing the name. And so in that spirit, that was the intent of developing these guidelines. We did want, my idea here was that only a state chapter could use an unmodified state name. So if I'm in Georgia, if I was wanting to have a state affiliate that represented Georgia, I would use the name Georgia and not a modified name like North Georgia, Northwest Georgia, or something along those lines. I would have an unmodified state name. And that's one of the guidelines that we would be having. We went through a list of a lot of different affiliates, and we quickly noticed some things that weren't some examples of affiliates that had a little bit of ambiguity as to which were state affiliates and which weren't. I can give you one example from our own state. We have the Georgia Chess Association. Our nickname that we used over the years was Georgia Chess. And there's another affiliate that calls themselves the Georgia Chess Club, which is, in my mind, an unmodified state name. I think to disambiguate, they may want to say Central Georgia or North Georgia or some modifier specifying regionality, where a state chapter would use an unmodified state name. So that's principle number one. Principle number two is that frequently you will have another state name incorporated within a university or college, such as, I guess we have Georgia State University here. In that case, if a university is declaring itself to be an affiliate, then they must clearly delineate themselves as a modifier, declaring themselves a university of that state rather than just the state. We've noticed that in a few cases here and there. So the second principle is college or university affiliates incorporating a state name must indicate that the state name refers to an educational institution within the state. Number three, we've noticed that there are some chapters that try to use a state nickname, and I think that happens with some frequency, but I would say that we want to discourage this practice for state chapters, as other non-chapter affiliates might choose to do the same. So that might make the situation ambiguous there, as we may talk about later on in the session here. Basically, we're just reiterating that you should use that the state affiliate should have the unique right to use the unmodified state or territory name. And so that's basically principle number three. And then principle number four is the acknowledgement, the realization that frequently state chapters will delegate to other affiliates to confer other state titles, such as a state chapter may confer to a scholastic organization to be the designated affiliate that confers state scholastic titles. Jim also talked about the fact that sometimes state chapters will delegate women's titles, seniors titles, other specialty subgroup titles, and so that may also there are periods, there are other situations where a state chapter may delegate. And so that is why principle number four exists here. And I've stated here that the relationship of a state affiliate to have a state title conferred is best clarified with a memorandum of understanding between the two organizations. I think that makes it clear and unambiguous that the other non-state affiliate has the ability to do state titles for a certain group of types of state titles over a period of time. So basically, that's it, short and sweet here. Those are the four principles there. And since I've gone through that, I wonder if there are other people that have other thoughts in mind about other things that we should incorporate within these guidelines. Do we have any? Let's see, I'm not seeing my, let me get my, having difficulty. Let me stop. I'm looking for my screen. There, I'm looking for, I've got my screen back. Anyone have any other ideas that they'd like to express about this set of naming conventions?
If you want me to unmute at any time and let everyone unmute themselves, just let me know.
Okay, I'm not seeing, oh, I see Robin with her hand up there. Go ahead, Robin.
We got him on mute. Is that right, Renee?
Yeah, let's see.
Okay, there you go.
Good evening, everyone.
Hey.
I would like to know if you plan on including some language in which the name of the affiliate has to reflect, and I'm not sure how to word it. The name of the affiliate has to reflect the truth, like grammatically, or like, I don't know. Say for instance, if someone named their organization federation, but it's not federation, but maybe that's misleading. Like, is there any language, not to pick on anyone, but is there any language being planned so that the name of your organization has to actually reflect a true definition?
I hadn't thought about that a lot. I can sort of, I guess a affiliate could be a federation within their own set of federations, I suppose. I suppose someone could name themselves the Georgia Chess Empire or something like that, and then we have to describe what an empire. But I had not thought about that. I think that I think I'd probably have to have a do you have a
Yeah, you might
specific
have to think
example?
about it for next year. You might have to think
Mhm.
about it for next year, but I think it's worth mentioning.
I think that's worth mentioning. I think that there may be something that's not uh, true, doesn't reflect the true nature of the club as something significant. And this can be considered kind of a living document that's going to be, it's not a finished product, but something that can be modified as we have needs to modify later there. But that's a good point, Rob. Thanks.
Thank you.
Other people, we have other people. Okay, I don't see any other hands here right off the bat, so I will conclude my, oh, there's Caleb Brown. Go ahead, Caleb. Can we
There we
unmute
go.
Caleb? Thank you.
I had to figure out how to raise my hand. I was
Okay.
just wondering, how is this policy going to be enforced? Like, I mean, it all sounds like a great idea. It's just, what's the practical way we're going to actually make sure these guidelines are followed?
That's a good point. We haven't really given a great deal of thought. It could be done on a challenge basis. It could be done, the SAC could be going systematically and looking through that and just making suggestions. I don't know that we want to use an iron hand, but I think that we want to have we want to provide some guidance and some suggestion that your affiliate may be a little ambiguous, hard to distinguish from the state affiliate, and maybe come up with an alternate name or some other plan of action within a certain time period. Can we unmute Mike Neatman?
I'm unmuted. Can you hear me? Yeah. Can you hear me
Right.
okay?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Okay. You mentioned colleges and universities here, but do you feel there's a need to call out scholastic organizations that might think they're a state affiliate or statewide affiliate for that matter?
I think that may be of some there may be some period of realignment. Let's say you have a North Georgia Scholastic Association and you have a will that really be the the sub-organization that confers Georgia titles? And you can see that we're using a modifier to the state. Maybe there may be some period where we suggest either removing modifiers or changing modifiers to make the situation less ambiguous. Let me read his chat here. John Fernandez, the executive board says, I was imagining the office, SAC, the executive board and the delegates in some combination would be on the front lines on enforcement when constructing this, but no strong feeling as to what is optimal. Similar to what I feel there too, that it could be brought up by any of these particular groups here that want to bring it up there. So it's not, as you can see, it's not really clear and set in stone as to the procedure for this sort of thing, but I think these are all good points to be bringing up as we move forward. Thank you, Mike. Other comments, Mike?
No, that was the main thing there. I mean, I guess the question is, would you be offended if there was a Georgia Scholastic Chess Association group that suddenly appeared on the radar somewhere? So that's what I'm
Well,
talking about.
it would need to be clear that they would be the organization that we designated to confer scholastic titles. The state affiliate should be the one that holds the ability to confer all state titles, and that would then need to be delegated to whichever organizations that we wanted to for whatever period of time, if it's one year or longer. So I think your point is well taken. What happens for the spontaneous formation of a unmodified state scholastic association there? I think that sort of goes to the heart of that state unmodified state convention, that principle that I was bringing up.
And then I also think hand in hand go the naming of the tournaments. As you reflect on if I'm the North Georgia Scholastic Chess Association and I have the North Georgia Scholastic Championships, as long as I call them out by my regional name, I think that's different than just saying the Georgia or the Peach State Scholastic Chess Championships or something like that. My understanding, and it's come to my attention a couple times here recently, that US Chess does do some screening of those names as they come in through the TLA office.
Oh, okay. Good to know. Summit Bose has a question here. It says, what about private clubs that are not affiliated but use the state name in their chess club? As we said, you may not have been here, Summit. We were talking about you can use a modified state name like Northwest Georgia, Northeast Georgia, South Georgia, but the unmodified state name should be reserved for the state or territorial affiliate. So that's the idea behind that. Okay. Other questions? Oh, we have Frank DeBonis. Go ahead, Frank. Let's unmute Frank. Yes,
Bob, messenger last year where the state's affiliate meeting mentioned nicknames like Bob runs the Granite State Chess, or if he had Peach State Chess, that's really not stating that you're the state affiliate. What about that?
That, I think we have let that go here. If my friend Thad Rogers has the Peach State Championship, we have not disputed. If it's the Georgia State Championship, we own that. So we have allowed, and in my case, in my mind, that's allowable there. We can debate that, and maybe that should be debated too. But I think that's in my mind how I've had it settled out. Good question.
To me, it's also important, is it objectionable to the state chapter that the name is infringing upon?
True.
If they have a good working relationship and they don't find it to be an infringement, I think that would go a lot differently in terms of your question than if there's concerns by the state chapter.
We have our Vice President, Kevin Pryor, would like to weigh in here. Can we unmute Kevin? Thank you.
He is.
Yes. I just wanted to say, to the point that you made, Fun, there is a light cursory overview when TLAs are submitted. We do take a look at some of those to see if they infringe upon state championships, because sometimes, non-state affiliates will title something a state championship. And so there is a little bit of a review over that, but it's not particularly heavy or draconian, but it is something that is being observed.
Okay, great. Well, perhaps these guidelines will help. We have any others? Let's see, other comments, Kevin? Okay, thanks, Kevin. Anyone else? I'd like to move on to back to and throw it back to Jim there because I know he's got a lot of ground to cover. Thanks, Jim. Appreciate you.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's very helpful. And by no means is it the end point of this discussion or a solution. It's something that all of you are pointing out, that there are lots of little nuances that need to be addressed. So that's why this type of discussion is so important. Okay, so let's see. Can you stop sharing fun and I'll share
Oh, yes.
slide presentation
Yeah.
for the survey? Okay. Okay, so this is something that has been posted on the US Chess delegate page, this presentation, as well as a written full report. Earlier today, Rosa McMahon sent out these documents in PDF form to those that were registered at that time. So if you registered late and didn't get the documents and want them, you can go out to the US Chess website where the delegate information is posted, or you can reach out to Rose or to me and we'd be happy to send them to you. So as previously mentioned, we did a state chapter survey on how they are performing their duties as a state chapter. I'm going to go into some information about why we did a survey, how we designed the survey, how the survey was distributed, then get into the meat of it. What are some of the highlights of the results that we found? And then we'd like to identify maybe some key things that our committee can work on for state chapters over the next year. So as I mentioned earlier, some of the duties assigned by the executive board to lead the development of education materials. So many committees are often seen only in the light of a complaint is filed and then the committee weighs in and gives their interpretation of the complaint and how maybe it should proceed. We would like to be more proactive in a lot of the things that we do so that we can prevent that from happening, of course, in the future, but also to fulfill our duties under our state and affiliates chapter. But where we start heading with that development of education materials and best practices was in itself a challenge. We didn't want to just pick things off the top of our committee's head as, oh yeah, we definitely need this or definitely need that. We wanted to survey you and find out. So we designed a survey based on the DASI, or Delegate Action of Continuing Interest, which I'll continue to refer to now as DASI. It was first published or first approved by the delegates in 1991, and it's been updated several times. It's a full page. You're going to see me go through and abbreviate a lot of those requirements for the purpose of this presentation and brevity. But if you want to see the full DASI, it's on the Chess website, US Chess website. It's also in an appendix in the final report. But what we did is turn some of the requirements into questions, and we tried to be as true to the question as possible. So for example, requirement 1 in the DASI says, pay its affiliate memberships when due and payable. And then we asked ourselves, so are you current on your membership dues? Took larger statements that might have multiple requirements So like requirement 2, it has a variety of things in here regarding identifying delegates, submitting that to US Chess and whether whether the US Chess members at that time. So we might have broken up into a couple of questions. So when you take 10 and you break it down, and especially item 4, which has all the bylaws stuff, it can get to be a little longer than 10 questions. And I appreciate the states that went through the process to answer the questions. So initially on December 22nd, through US Chess and the governance coordinator, they sent a survey that had those questions in them out to the 52 state affiliates on behalf of us. And this is the statement that we meant. We really wanted it to come across as, hey, we're just trying to learn. We're not trying to find things that we can catch you on in violation of a DASI requirement and then bring that up and go forward from there. What we're really trying to do is learn how you're doing, where the gaps are, and how we can identify ways to close those. It took a couple times for us to send out some reminders, but eventually we closed the survey on March 10th of this year. And we had a total of 44 responses from the 52 state chapters. California has 2, and then of course DC has 1. That's how we get to 52. This was all done in electronic format using a survey tool. There was nothing paper, nothing of that nature submitted or requested. So as I go back and talk about the DASI a little bit more, the first 4 items of the DASI were requirements, and then the last 6 were recommendations. So we tried to take mind of that. And then, as I mentioned, they had multiple identities. So here are the 4 requirements in abbreviated format. Again, if you would like to really dig in and read the entire DASI, go at it. Even on our own committee, we learned a lot about the DASI just going through this process. So I would imagine any state chapter or the officers of a state chapter, if you pull out the DASI and kind of go through it line by line, there's an educational element to just doing that. And maybe doing the survey was an educational exercise in itself, saying, oh, I didn't even know that was a requirement or a recommendation. So there were a couple questions people had no idea how to respond and just left it blank. I'll get into these in more detail on the next slides and what the responses were. First of all, let's just talk about the DASI itself. Let's not talk about how state chapters are doing. It became, we made some observations based on the responses or the lack of response in some of that. So one thing is there's a requirement for a state championship. Some people read that to be the Scholastic Championships, the Women's Championship, Senior Championship, and so forth, versus an open USCF rated championship where all state members can participate. So that's something that some states may want to sit down and clarify in their heads or as a group to know. The requirement comes in the having a US state, or excuse me, having a USCF rated state open championship. The recommendation is that there are championships for all the other invitational events. Mike is very involved with the senior, I know of for sure. Now, again, those are recommendations. Where they go in terms of matter of best practice, that's also another observation. In duty number 9, here's an example of something that might be ambiguous. Not so much I got confused with another requirement, but that I'm not quite sure what's being asked. Duty number 9, responsibly act in the best interest of the entire state chapter membership, which is really kind of a catch-all. So if you're not doing it in the other things and it's still in the best interest, you should take note of that and be active in that. But there are opportunities for us, as SAC, to provide more guidance on exactly what does that mean and how does that apply to you as a state chapter? I was just gonna stop here and ask if anybody else has any other of the 10 DASI duties that they think might be confusing or otherwise unclear that we should take note of. So Larry has his hand up.
Yeah, one thing I'm not positive about, that as I recall, I thought the DASI says state chess championship. The word open, I don't think is anywhere there.
No, but that's
Wait,
my,
well, the point is that they could have a closed one. And it
yeah,
would
but,
still fulfill the requirement.
right, right.
Also, you know, God forbid it ever happens again, that if we run into another pandemic, there should be provisions to allow it to be held online rather than in person as well.
Right. And it doesn't say anything about whether it should be online or in person. You're correct. I said open. I come from a state where they had a closed championship, but anybody could qualify. Only 6 could qualify, eventually would be qualified, but it was open to anybody to participate in all the qualifying events. And then the top 6 finishers participated in the close. Maybe other states do it above and beyond that as well, based on rating and some other things that I'm unaware of. So that's a good point, Larry. Thank you very much. Okay, let's see. So some other areas in the DASA we thought might not be written as current practices doing, or what the current practice is. So one of them was the clearinghouse. Everybody has different needs in terms of a clearinghouse, but it's certainly being done quite differently across the state. So that to me comes up as an area where maybe SAC could help provide some additional guidance. Find out what best practices really are. Some, for example, a best practice that I'll get into later, some are developing regional clearinghouses, you know, with multiple states all working together. Some rely more on registration websites and how they do that. But nevertheless, it was really all over the board. Some didn't even do it. It might have been an informal, hey, I know so-and-so, I'll give them a call and see if they're doing anything. We had a situation in Iowa where we were about to sign a contract for a tournament at a hotel when another very large organization wanted to come in and sponsor one of their big tournaments. We were thrilled that they would want to come into Iowa to do that, but it would have really hurt financially the person who had held the contract and had the minimum payments due. So how that functions is an important, from not just because of desire or I want this date, but because, hey, I don't want to sign a contract for a hotel when I know someone else is going to come in and really put on a big event. So I've mentioned 2 duties that might be a little unclear or ambiguous, and then here are 2 that might not be current with the way state chapters actively manage these situations. Anybody have any other comments on some of the duties listed in the DASI that might be out of date? It's not that we don't want to comply with them. It's like we got better ways to do it. Tim? Yep. Tim Rademacher.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I had a question. It was on duty number 6. I'm Tim Rademacher from Minnesota, by the way. So kind of relating to what you were talking about in Iowa, wondering when you were talking about coordination of tournaments for somebody that was coming into the state to hold a tournament and the impact that might have, a question sort of along those lines is, and maybe related to this duty number 6, is if you have a couple affiliates that are in the same state, maybe even the same city, And if they are both holding tournaments, and let's say they both end up not just like renting hotel or community space, but they have a chess facility that they might rent. Do you guys have any guidelines or recommendations when it's not just like an occasional weekend where somebody was coming into the state for an event, but if you have a couple affiliates that have a busy chess calendar and they each have a facility, about working that out, coordinating that, because obviously the competition would be a concern.
Oh, that's certainly a difficult situation, especially if I'm going to assume Minneapolis would be a large enough city to hold multiple affiliates. I think the point of this is that it relies on the state to come up with a methodology. And the current DASI says a tournament clearinghouse, but everybody is interpreting this differently. Some are not even doing it. Some have very advanced systems. And so perhaps more within the duties of SAC is, can we come up with some guidelines that state chapters can then implement as a best practice? So perhaps we need to go to other jurisdictions that have the same situation you have in Minnesota and ask, how are they managing it? And then come back and say, here are 10 jurisdictions that have multiple within the same city limits or something, or same metropolitan area. This is how they coordinate it, so that you have, as a state chapter, a list of tools that you could reference and say, this one fits our situation the best. Let's figure out how we can implement that here. Rather than SAC coming and saying, you two have to behave, you have to play nice. Especially if it's based on us responding to a complaint where one files a complaint against the other and all that kind of stuff. Where now you're already down the path of trying to sort out problems rather than preventing them from happening in the first place. How does that sound, Tim? Am I missing something? Am I getting to your concern or issue? Can we put Tim back on? Yeah. Well, let's see.
Okay, thank you. Can you
Yep.
hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
I had to wait to get unmuted again. Yeah, that sounds good. I was just looking for some guidance and recommendations, and agree you want to try to, understand this up front before you run into any difficulties. And that's why I was asking for some clarification. And I don't know if it would be, when the guidelines come out, if it would be more incumbent upon the state chapter to act as more of the clearinghouse, because that's kind of the role you play in Duty 6, as I understand it, where you're helping other affiliates advertise and coordinate events, et cetera. So, but yeah, I would appreciate any guidelines or recommendations in that area.
Yes. Okay. So that is not something I had on my current list when we get to the end, Tim, but I'm going to be adding it. Okay.
Thank you.
Based on your feedback, because, well, I do have stuff in here about clearinghouse, but yours is more specific, and I like that. That's very helpful. That's very helpful.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. So I've got three of the DASI duties that we saw the most, the greatest differences, and the things that we thought we could share as well as comment on. And so I'm going to go through those. One of them is the bylaws. And by far, this is the most demanding requirement in the DASI. But we did see that state chapters that have very strong activity, very strong systems, very good cooperation and promotion, are the ones with the strongest set of bylaws. And I'll give some examples as we go here. So one of the requirements in the bylaws is to have a purpose statement. So we saw some very vague mission statements or purposes, such as promote chess, grow chess. Well, of course we want to do that, but how is that actionable? How are you going to actually implement an action plan to be able to grow chess? There were a number of affiliates with no purpose statement. And we thought, well, you know, this might help you. You're struggling on getting volunteers or activities or other things like that. Maybe if you really narrowed or focused your work into a specific purpose statement, that would be helpful. But we saw from examples of strong purpose statements, things like organizing statewide tournaments, educating players about chess, so having educational workshops, working with schools and affiliates directly so that we're coordinating with them to host these scholastic events, whether that's education, camps, or tournaments. Membership was another element in the bylaws. Most state chapters have open memberships with the dues requirement. We thought it was interesting that there were a few state chapters who granted memberships to all U.S. chess members. They didn't require payment. If you're a U.S. chess member, you're a state chapter member as well. And I was taking strong note to how many different types of membership levels some state chapters have. Some just have one, others have scholastic, family, senior, lifetime, and there are even more, I'm sure, military and others. Trying to be as inclusive as possible in reaching out to the needs of the specific membership base. When asked how members can participate, it was pretty much left to just participating in state tournaments, running for office, and attending meetings. But other state chapters that we saw really strong statements that had things such as organizing and directing tournaments. So there was ways to immediately get involved with your state chapter on how to help organize or direct state championships, how to promote the state championship through publications. Maybe somebody's the social media coordinator, how they work with local clubs specifically, and how they promote participation by women and girls. Okay, so there are ways that you can be more specific and less general, and we found that those states had better outcomes in terms of activity and participation and promotion with their chess club or chapters and local affiliates. And then finally, the meeting schedule. I think there's some confusion in the responses when it says meeting schedule in the DASI. Are we talking about the all members meeting? Is it just the board of directors meeting? Both. We saw that people would address one, but not the other. So there may be some opportunities to clarify what that is. Some state chapter boards we were very impressed with. They met as frequently as monthly, bi-monthly, or even quarterly. I know my state chapter met annually, and that was about as far as we took it. So I was really impressed by that. Of course, many state chapters schedule their all membership meeting during an activity, a tournament that is well attended, like a state championship. One state mentioned that they had an annual meeting during a team tournament, which was their most popular event. And even another one mentioned that they did theirs online. So people are looking for different ways to promote the meetings and get greater participation. And I think some of these are really good. But certainly something we wanted to share. Additional recommended, so these are the last 6 elements in the DASI. We already talked a bit about the clearinghouse, tournament promotion, and then the women's coordinator will be the last thing that I'll talk about. So how does your state chapter directly sponsor or hold other chess tournaments throughout the state, not just the state championship, whether it's closed or open, right, Larry? And yes, many states hold a lot of tournaments outside the mandated ones. And so they have heritage events, they have reserve events, they have class events, they have team tournaments, blitz tournaments, action quiz championships, and so forth. Most people are promoting their tournaments through the website or tournament registration sites. To a lesser extent, emails, social media, mailings, flyers are used, but definitely the website's internet access is by far the most prevalent. And then I've already hit on the clearinghouse is not maybe as current as practices out there in the states are implementing. So I won't try to refrain from all of that. One thing though that took note to is that though people are just relying on the tournament announcement as their clearinghouse. So that's kind of after the fact, which I already gave you an example, and we got into the city's situation that Tim mentioned, and that where we need to be proactive so that we haven't really made financial commitments and can adjust without some harm come to somebody. So for just relying on tournament life announcements, there are situations that can be missed. And then I'm really impressed with the areas like New England, Pacific Northwest, having regional clearinghouses. New York mentioned that they're working on a tri-state clearinghouse. The efforts that are going into that require, volunteers, but it also allows for sharing of resources. One person, one state in a regional setup doesn't necessarily have to take on all the burden. They can share the work. And when you don't have a lot of volunteers to do everything, that may be a great way to do it. It also is more encompassing and gives everybody better opportunities, especially where they're small geographically, to avoid conflicts. Finally, women's coordinator. I know this is the newest of the DASI elements, and perhaps that's why we saw such varied answers. The one thing, though, that we really wanted to emphasize is that everybody was really trying to make this work. Not everybody was as successful as others in getting a specific women's coordinator identified. But other people are taking on that duty, whether it's a president or scholastic coordinator or someone else. The duties, the work that is needed to promote women's chess, female chess participation is being taken on by the states. And we're seeing this through a steady increase overall in women and girls participation. So I really bring this up to say, if you're struggling, don't worry. You're not the only state chapter that may be struggling with it. But we're noticing that everybody is giving it their best and trying to make as much progress in this area as possible. And we're seeing results. So here I'm going to kind of turn it over to you guys. I've already gotten some good ideas. I've written down some stuff, but as SAC, we're going to, perhaps, later on in this year, perhaps in September, start trying to come up with a work plan. And we want to have it based on your feedback and input. So I'm going to ask, how do we improve on current practices? I recognize a lot of organizations been around for a very long time, have a deep culture, great history, and relationships are really important amongst their members. So I preface that so that when I ask these other questions, I don't want to sound heavy-handed in any way. So one idea that has popped up is, would the development of a model set of bylaws be helpful? When I was an environmental regulator before I retired, there are always all kinds of model regulations for food code or for pool safety or whatever might be the case. They were helpful, but they filled a need. If there isn't a need for a model set of bylaws, then there's no real need, real reason to put any effort into that. I'll shut up. I'm talking way too much. Does anybody have any feedback on that part? Or if you want to read the other two bullets, I was thinking of a mentorship program for state chapters. I mentioned some are really robust and doing great things. If you have a need in a specific area, could we pair you up with another state chapter on that specific area?
Jim, I think that having a model set of bylaws might be quite useful there. We could do limited objectives, moderate and grandiose, and try to see what they look like there. So there might be, I think that might be worth a try.
Okay, Caleb?
Well, I would think model bylaws might be helpful, especially, I mean, I don't know for more established state chapters, but especially if you have a case where it's like Alaska doesn't, like you have a state that doesn't have a state chapter, or new state chapters coming in, that may be helpful for them to have that while they're drafting their bylaws. But I would think particularly more than just that, having like, a list where you can find the bylaws of all different states might be helpful for people that are looking for ideas to improve their bylaws. So you can just go through and read all those easily rather than trying to find them by going to like 50 different state websites and figuring out where they go there.
Which, by the way, I have done. I have a list of the websites of all bylaws, and if those missing, we've actually got hard copies.
Okay, so it might be helpful, like to post that
Yeah.
somewhere. People can
Okay.
find that.
So not only just having a model set, but sharing other people's bylaws. Did I get that correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, if the list is already there, you might as well like get posted to the website so people can get to that.
Okay. Tim?
Yes, thank you. I'm going to comment on the next bullet about mentorship. I can see a lot of benefit to that. I'm not sure what's envisioned, if it's a one-on-one or if it's some sort of a user group, which I guess this sort of is for the state affiliates. But I think some of the questions I was asking earlier regarding guidelines, sort of learning the ins and outs and the do's and don'ts of the state chapter role could be effectively handled through a mentorship or sort of a small user group. So I think that would be a good idea.
Thank you. I didn't think about small user group. That's very good. Frank?
Real quick, I think without the USF being too constringent on states, allowing the states the flexibility of making their own rules, which is part of the American way. There should be a minimum of some, at least a minimum requirements, like sometimes people don't know about a regional clearinghouse, and if the state has a clearinghouse that just posts only their events or has their bylaws but don't post the bylaws, their bylaws might be different, but they should be, state affiliates should have them available on their website. Also, maybe a meeting schedule, maybe also some minimum requirements for membership. So I think they need to specify a little more specific requirements, at least a minimum requirement for the state affiliate, without being too demanding. Right now it's very vague, and It's hot. Everybody's doing kind of whatever they want in some states. Not every state. Most states are. I know in Connecticut and Massachusetts they post everybody's events. The bylaws are right on their website. Here in New England, most states do have that. I have actually seen us. We have that on our website, but some states don't. Some state affiliates don't. Particularly my state, they only post their own events, things like that. That's what we're really concerned about. We just want access so everyone's events can be posted. Unless there's a conflict, everybody knows about what the bylaws are, what the rules are, instead of having, asking, we don't know. I've had people come to me, what are the bylaws of our state affiliate? We have to find them, they're not posted. Just asking some questions that the state's affiliates committee might want to consider as a minimum requirement for each state affiliate.
Okay, thank you. Caleb is next again.
So since I saw mentioned an idea I just had, about that was maybe it would be helpful to have some kind of, training, just a voluntary kind of training program for new state chapter officers, or especially new state chapter presidents. Because I know, like, in Texas, for example, it's like most of the incumbents on their officers are retiring this at this coming election. So there's going to be, new people. I imagine that's the situation that happens in other states. It might be helpful to have something along that, either webinars or some read materials to kind of help people that are just coming in to do that.
That is an excellent observation, Caleb, because even some of our own committee members have said, I didn't know this existed. I didn't know this was a requirement. I didn't know this was DASI was available. Now, we were small states, but didn't know it until we got onto this committee. So I can only imagine somebody just coming in, especially if there's a large sea change and not much institutional memory maintained, that would be really hard. I think that's a great idea. That's very easy, not easy, but it's very actionable. It's something that you can sit down and concretely put together. You could even record them and let people watch them at their own leisure if they can't make the actual webinar. Thank you. Larry.
Yeah, sort of along those same lines, it might be a good idea if there was some sort of guidelines or suggestions as far as delegates and alternate delegates, because that has seemed to be a bit of a problem in the past couple of years, especially I've noticed quite a number of states that don't list any alternates, which used to be, you go back 20 years, everybody had alternates listed, so it might be a good idea to, disseminate something to give, the new and even the existing people that are involved, usually it's the president, some sort of an idea of how to go about getting delegates for the delegates meetings, because that always has actually been the major problem. It's like,
okay,
finding people that will attend for you.
Yep. And in fact, even just submitting, and I'm sure Renee can jump in on this, but even just the minimum requirement of submitting your delegate list, how they were chosen, are they members, is not fully complied with. Something as simple as a form might help get you more of that information than what they're getting now. And the whole delegates seating alternate delegates from other states and all of that is not something I could explain. Okay. There's no other comments there, which were all awesome. Go on to the next one real quick. Tournament promotion and coordination. So I've already got one suggestion of going out and try to find out how other large areas, large cities handle multiple affiliates, coordination, and try to share some best practices there. What other things, whether it's needed to be updated in the DASI or how SAC and US Chess can better support state chapter needs for internal coordination? Is regionalization the way to go? Or is that just something that needs to pop up where the states are identifying it? So Mike mentioned here, and I'm sorry, I'm probably getting, well, he just typed this in and Danny Road has some stuff. So I'm sorry I didn't look at all the chats. My apologies. So Fun says that their state chapters are attempting quarterly leadership sessions. Fun, would you like to share a little bit more about what that is?
What we do is we are planning to have quarterly sessions where we have a half day on a weekend to talk about leadership development. And then the other half day would be more for TD development. So that's basically how we want to break it up. So that is going on. We have the stronger TDs mentoring the newer ones, and I have a little program for leadership. I have my own ideas about what happens with leadership and how it happens, and that it's basically a learned skill. And basically, by the time the day is over with, people are able to start thinking about how they would run a committee and that type of thing, how to just basically work and play well with others in a volunteer organization, just some real realizations, that sort of thing. So yeah, it's just a half day session with that half day session of TD work.
Okay. Okay. Mike mentioned that in the past there's been a new delegate meeting in person or online.
Yes,
when you
Mike
say
is in that, yeah.
Mike, do you mean like very recent past, or do you mean like long time ago past? Could we unmute Mike, please? Let's see.
There we go. Finally, yes. Yeah, it was just a few years ago, I think, towards the end of my tenure on the executive board. We put something together.
Okay.
And it was at one point it was posted on the US Chess website. And I'll admit I haven't actually gone out and looked for it this year, but so I don't know if it's there or not.
How long was that, and who led it?
2018 to 2020, somewhere in that range. And maybe later.
Was it a half day training? Was it just an hour?
Oh, it was it was just an hour of bullet points. Yeah.
Okay. Do you know who led that?
I think it was Mike Hoffpower first, right?
Mike did?
Well, he's on this call, but I think it was Carol Meyer, and actually it was Ken Ballou, I think, also was involved.
Okay.
And I think I had, since I was on the board as secretary, I had a couple of slides that I presented as part of that.
Okay. Good suggestion. I'll look into seeing if we can quickly recover that and go from there.
I have one additional question, if I may.
Oh, sorry, sure.
This is probably directed to Renee, and I'm not sure she can answer it, but when a new affiliate comes on, or even for that matter, when an affiliate renews, are they made aware of certain things such as that a clearinghouse exists? and what their local clearinghouse, or who is their local clearinghouse?
I do not know. I will have to look.
Yeah. I would think anytime there's an affiliate or even a reminder on a renewal, that information should be sent.
Okay. It's a good suggestion, Mike.
Mhm.
Danny has his hand up, so go ahead.
This has been happening for close to 2 years now. First time it happened is when a tournament in Los Angeles was held opposite the US Open, where a FIDE event was trying to pull players from the Dinker and the Barber and elsewhere to a Norm tournament. And I felt that there's new organizers out there, specifically at the higher levels of organizing, who just don't care. And so what happens is they'll organize a Norm tournament close to another Norm tournament, or they'll organize a Norm tournament opposite a state championship, or even a US Chess National event. I think there's multiple committees that need to work together to make the clearinghouse system better so that new organizers and affiliates, or even organizers and affiliates, need a reminder of just communicate, don't just dump events on top of one another, because it hurts players. It hurts a lot of Scholastic players. It hurts open players. They're having to make difficult choices, and all the events become worse. If you just take a look at what's happening this weekend, right? You have, the US Junior Open, the US Senior Open, you have the US Junior Chess Congress, you have the Pan Ams down in Orlando, you have multiple CCA events, you have the Marshall Centennial at the same time, right? And so sometimes there needs to be like a miles restriction. I know that there's a regional restriction, but regions sometimes don't exactly work. Sometimes you have to make the regions a little bit better. I know that there's been some zip code stuff done in the past, but the clearinghouse system to me has not been pushed hard by anybody. And so therefore there's a lot of just, hey, you know what? Let's just operate a tournament. Let's not tell anybody, and let's just post a TLA about it. And it just gets a little bit frustrating when there was a Norm tournament held in New York City opposite Amateur Team East, and both tournaments had to now quote unquote compete with one another. And that shouldn't have happened, right? And so I think everyone needs to have a meeting of the minds here when it comes to improving the clearinghouse system for the number one thing, communication, and therefore the understanding, and not just dumping events. So I know I'm being a little bit pushy on this, but it's been a little bit hard to convince.
Yeah. I hear you. And this cuts across many, I don't know, committees, boards, whatever. Organizing something to get everybody together to do it the same way or move forward in the same direction is important. Okay. Caleb, is your hand back up? Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, there was a question about reminders to affiliates, like when they renew, and I just renewed for my affiliate like about a week ago, and I don't remember there being any kind of reminders about clearinghouses, but it might be helpful when we send out the confirmation email for that we have like just a list of here's some resources you should remember exist. Clearinghouse would be one of them. There might be other things. So I think that shouldn't be too difficult to do, but it would be, helpful reminders, getting that every year. Those things exist.
Yes, affiliate reminders as they renew. Okay. So I'll wrap up with the women's coordinator. How I have the disadvantage of reading all these survey responses, but they're just filling in a form. So I don't know how, if we're reading this right, or if we're reading too much into it or not enough into it. Any feedback from anyone that could tell us how they see coordination, promotion of chess for female players is going state by state? Is anyone really struggling with this? Fun. You muted? Okay.
And I can unmute. Yeah, it's just always seems to be a continuing issue there to continue to develop women's events there. There's always a, you know, the challenge of providing the hook, finding the interest, finding something unique to get players' interest and develop excitement about it. It's just it's something I'm always having to work with. We have it always at some low level, but getting it to the next level is always a challenge. I don't have any solutions for you.
Right, Maureen. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to unmute you. Mute you. I meant to unmute you.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hey, sorry, if I go into dead zone, we're driving. David is driving and I'm listening in. No, I would say that the women's coordinator has been a process, and I am the first to say, hey, we have a long ways to go. However, when we introduced the DASI back in, I think 2016, 17, we were kind of at the beginnings of, just to give you a background as to why we put this DASI in. And it was really because we didn't have anything going on back then, and back in 2015, 2016. And so we were wanting to jumpstart that or get something at least out there in front of the states, so that they could at least think about it and maybe help start something. And like I said, as a volunteer, like so many of you all are, it's been a process. It's been a progress, actually, but it has definitely been a process of finding. When we stated this, it did not have to be a female. It could be your state president. It could be your scholastic coordinator. It could be somebody, but somebody designated, or it could be a group, it could be the board, but somebody, it could have been a parent, that would kind of take hold of being responsible for the women and girls side for your state to grow. And how we did that was to launch, through state female chess events, through regional events, through volunteerism. But in any case, we are still in that process. I believe we counted up 15 coordinators. But in talking with some of the individual states and some of you all personally, we have been able to find and coordinate events in the state, whether that's at a club level, whether that's at a state women and girls or girls only event, to regional events, to monthly club events. So it's a slow progress. And I don't know how many, so many people have come to us and said, yes, we really do want to grow women and girls. How do we do that? Well, that's kind of like, Jim, what you were saying. How can we take from the best of the best in the states and present that to other states that are interested but have maybe a smaller number, smaller percentage? How can we help each other grow in that respect? And that's how we've kind of been doing this slowly since then. So I would love to hear any of your ideas or thoughts on this to help maybe tweak it better. I'm all ears.
Yeah. Well, Maureen, Jim has lost power, so I'm gonna go ahead and take the mic for just a little bit. Thank you for your encouragement. Thank you for acknowledging all the challenges that you've been having getting things going. And I think it is good to have good examples of what some of the chapters are doing there. Fortunately, we did have we do have a women's coordinator that I just appointed a few months before that survey came out, so I was able to answer in the affirmative there. So thanks for that, Maureen. Lawrence, can we unmute Lawrence, and I think he's had his hand up here.
I believe I'm already unmuted. I would like to, well, first of all, conveniently, at least here in Illinois, we only have the Kasparov All-Girls Tournament. However, I know at one point the idea was to have, sort of a little regional events along the same sort of lines. I even actually ran one here in Illinois. I think it was the only time it was run. It didn't turn out too well. The issue is really, of course, with any tournament, finding the site, but also there's the issue as far as getting the information out there, developing the interest and actually playing in some sort of in such a tournament, whether it's women's only, girls only, whatever. I remember when I was a TD, and it was in 2014, if the girls closed, girls junior closed, I should say. I came up with the idea, well, maybe there should be a girls cadet. And of course, at the time, it was pointed out to me that basically all the ones in the girls junior would have qualified for a girls cadet. I did go ahead during the pandemic and actually run an online version of such an event, a girls cadet. And I think that is really where we need to tap into is the idea of doing developing more girls only online tournaments. For that matter, having, you have the girls club, maybe having a girls only site for, discussion and play that, is only for girls or females. I think that is something that maybe could be developed. The question has to be is, where is the interest lie, and how do we further develop what interest is out there, and hopefully grow girls and women's chess in general.
Lawrence, we're kind of losing you a little bit. Maybe if you can get a little closer to the mic.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, you need to develop the interest. Find those that would like to do something, whether it's just online, whether it's in person. But you have to find some way, to find these women and girls and get them brought in, and just in general, grow, female chess.
Yeah. What I do, Lawrence, just to give you an idea, I tend to brute force things a little bit. And by brute forcing, I mean, if you put women front and center in your leadership, then things will start happening more or less on their own spontaneously. And if I can't, I just need to keep getting more people with more imagination than me to go ahead and have some ideas that will attract attention there. So we have 3 women and 3 men on our board, and I think that's a good beginning there to encourage women to be in the leadership part. And then I think things progress from there. Let me see if I can get Daniel here. Danny Rode wanted to unmute here. Let's see
All
if
right.
I can. Yeah.
I think there's a list of things that the Women's Committee and states and affiliates can work on together here to bring up a list of different things, and are you doing them and are you not? So, for example, are you encouraging, high school students to start their own things? In New York, we had a group of high school students who just started organizing events because they were, female players. They were top female players in the state. They got together, they started to form their own little thing, and then they hosted their own events. They were the Unruly Queens. US Chess gave them a grant for a couple of years. Another group called Her Move Next also does these online events once a month, and they get all these young girls to just communicate and just talk. Then there's the Marshall Chess Club. Marshall Chess Club has Friday night events hosted by Beatrice Marinello. They do their own events. It's good to have representation, obviously, inside your leadership, but I think it mostly takes everyone to just notice when one person wants to get involved and to just encourage them to start something. You know, New York has had a state girls championship for about close to 10 years now, maybe a little bit less. We currently have 300 players playing in New York. You know, and so there's various events you can do, both rated tournaments, hosting gatherings, events, other things, just being at the local events and following the work that the Women's Committee has spent tireless hours on at the major events and incorporating that into your state. And so I think the incorporation of what the Women's Committee has been doing is what every state should try to achieve. And then asking and working with them to develop that.
Great ideas, Daniel. I think the idea of networking with other people, being able to work and play well with each other and start collaborating, I think that's it's easy. It's not an easy thing, but I think it's certainly an honorable objective and great to do. Jim is back online, so I'm going to toss it back to Jim now. Thanks, Jim, for getting back on. I need to unmute Jim. Need to unmute Jim.
Thank you.
There you go.
Sorry, folks. Lost power. Everything went down. Took me a few minutes to get back, but appreciate it. I did want to throw one more thing out here that's not on the list. I was mentioned that the U.S. Senior Open was last weekend, and I was a tournament director there. The senior committee was represented there and had their own meeting, and they asked basically if there's a way, like we're promoting women's chess, for promotion, better promotion of seniors, senior chess, if I can call it that. Looking for not necessarily another senior championship or something like that, but just more activity targeted for seniors. One reason that tournament is popular is because they play people that are their own age.
I don't know if, Maureen, maybe you could speak to this because I don't know if it's as easy to have senior-based events and initiatives right now. It's been much easier to have women and girls featured and trying to push that. I'm not sure if, and I'm on the senior committee, I'm just not sure how easy it is to get it going, but it needs motivation from a few people to start making the rounds, shall I say. I mean, Maureen and Kim and a few others on the women's committee back when it first got going really made an effort to attend every single US Chess National event, large tournaments, and really started to gather the necessary things there. I'm not sure if it probably needs a different format, but I just don't know how long that's going to take. It's like being 10 years behind on a project. Should have happened 10 years ago. Yeah. But that to me is part of why the women and girls projects are so great right now in comparison with the seniors. So if they're saying that they want more of that, then they've got to start attending open tournaments is what I'll say. Attending the open circuit, right? Going to World Open, going to US Open, going to, National Open, right? At National Open, there were 150 players playing in the beginners section, and some of those were seniors, right? And so there are opportunities abound, but you have to go with the calendar and literally spend hours and weekends of time just getting to meet people and starting projects so that way everyone can take it to their local area to start doing that. That's what the women's committee was doing. It's worked. I'm not sure if the senior committee or seniors should be doing it the same way. Probably it needs a little bit more refined or differences because it's a different scene. But that's just what I've seen is working and not working so far.
Thank you. That's very, very helpful feedback that I'm certainly going to pass along. Maureen, I saw your hand up at one point. Did you?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, yeah. No, Danny, what Danny is saying is correct. The Women's Committee has done so much over the years, and it's not any one person, but it's definitely group effort in coordinating this. Senior Women's is a great event to have. One of the things that we have discussed, because right now we have a Senior Women's momentum going with the ladies, the team going to Krakow, Poland, and just coming back. Yes, visibility at events is highly effective. Thank you, Rob. You're totally spot on. The visibility, it's getting out there. We pound the pavement of trying to advertise for all events, female events. We've added more events on the website, on the women's site, on the US Chess website. Any of you, and even tonight here, that you know of or know of, even local women's events, since they're so few and far between, please submit them to US Chess. Please send them to me or to the US Chess coordinator, Devon Croston, and he will post that on the US Chess website under the Women's tab. What we really need to have is, like I said, and Robin and everybody is in agreement, and that is we do need that visibility, because people in Kentucky that are having events, the people in the surrounding states may not know that. And we look at this as when we started this, started rolling this out with the women's coordinator, we started out really as top down, bottom up, and we eventually meet in the middle. And that's really what we are working, and that is coordinating from everything from the National Scholastics as having a girls' club room and visibility there. And then we really much try to advertise for any events, whether that's any state association or any private organization that is holding any female events. We try to advertise that there at the National Scholastics as well as on the website. We also have online women's, we also have, we just started an online all girls club events that US Chess, chess.com has posted. We are working with the state affiliates and or presidents and or scholastic coordinators as we reach out to you to help you figure out how to grow more women and girls in your area. And like I said, we piggyback on a lot of the these other organizers around the U.S. that has done a successful job in bringing in more girls by sharing that information. So fun, you're talking about the events you've had in the past. We've always asked first to see if we can share, and they almost always say, yes, we desperately would love to have you send this information out across the board. And that's the one nice thing that we've been able to do continuously, actually, all the way back to the very beginning when we started. And I know that there's been Women's Committee all the way back to, I don't know when, back in the 70s. But it just seems like in the last 10, 15 years, it is ramped up. And we're seeing that. And so the coordination in part of the DASI, like I said, number 10, was to have that, push that out there so that we could continue the growth. Now, like Danny was talking about in New York, what they're doing in New York, we would love to see that happening out west, in the south, in the north. But we find that every area in the region in the US is very different and very unique. For example, we just had a regional up in the Northwest, and we were finally able to do that. But as you know, the Northwest ratings they're on a different rating system. how did we get them their membership to switch over to US chess memberships? Well, we said, you are the expert in your areas. You know your volunteers, you know the females out there that you can coordinate and try and recruit. You know your volunteer base. You can all we ask is that we grow US chess memberships. How do we do that? Maybe you piggyback that on your own rating system. And that's exactly what they did. So they had an open side, they had their own, and then they had a group of USCF membership tournament rated events. So they combined that. What we ask is you come up with how you can best grow your area that's tailored particularly to your area, and use the ideas from, say, from Virginia or from Florida or from Texas, all of these events, but tailor to your area so that it's not, there's minimal amount of rules and regulations coming from US Chess Federation. And then you come up with some creative ideas. So we've had events happening at museums. We've had rock climbing events. We've had popcorn evening nights with women's and girls. And the one nice thing about, I have to put a plug in for Elizabeth Shaughnessy. She's been doing this for 40, 50 years. And she has been the one that has pushed for adult growing more women's chess, which I give her great, just great applause for that. And how much tenacity she's had over the years to really grow. She was the one that inspired between her and Robin Ramson, I think, were the ones, and I know, Robin, you're on the call, to grow on a regional level. But that was a concerted effort. So I don't know if I've answered, but I do know this, that we are trying to coordinate and get more coordination now. How to unify that? This is where I ask for your ideas. We would love to hear from you, because we still don't have, I'm just going to tell you this, we have the herring event coming up here in a couple of weeks. We still don't have Vermont and South Dakota and Alaska. So how can we get a female from that area? So these are just simple things. All the other states we have a female representative. And I know I'm going on here, but I hope that helps. And I don't know if that has inspired you or confused you guys, but would love to see. We loved it. The bottom line is the mission is grow females in your state. What that looks like, you guys know your territory's the best.
I think that's what the senior committee, Jim, needs to do, which is just to identify how to help encourage growth. And that might look a little different, because the advantage that the women's committee has had is encouraging scholastic play. So a lot of the things that they're able to do is focused around encouraging more girls to play, right? I think that's what the senior committee needs to sit down on a more regular basis, probably, and go over that stuff. I think that's the suggestion, and then go from there.
Yeah, definitely more follow-up. This was something that was told to me yesterday, and I wanted to share since this was a great opportunity. I appreciate you taking the time to add this to the agenda. Well, this really gets to the end of our agenda, if you will, for discussion topics and so forth. I'll give one last call if anybody had anything that they thought of that didn't get to ask earlier. Otherwise, I'll put up to the committee that I'll put my email address out here, and if you think of anything that you either didn't want to bring up on here because you weren't quite sure how to phrase it, or our time is limited, feel free to do so. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody. I'd like to thank all of our committee members for the work that they put in on this, and I hope you find some value out of it, but most importantly, I hope you see that we have a plan going forward on how we can further improve our relations for the state, or promotion and education for state affiliates. Renee or Kevin or Vish, did you want to have any closing thoughts or remarks or fun? I know you've done some great work
No,
here.
just thank everyone for being on the call tonight.
Yeah, great turnout. 30 people was excellent. All right, Renee, I think we're done. If you'd like to go ahead and close.